being the season opener. What do you hope to learn out of this game before you get to Tennessee the following week?
Well, I hope to learn a lot. I think there's going to be really good things that come out of the game that we didn't expect, and then there's going to be things we got to fix. And but how are we going to manage the tempo offense? How are we going to manage things that happen in a game from a negative standpoint? As players, you're not having fans and TV and all the things that go on with game day there. How are they going to handle game day? In general, and then adversity. Different than in practice. In practice you have a penalty or a drop and it's next play you just move on. Well, in the game there's bigger repercussions mentally sometimes. Can they get to the next play? How do they sustain success? If they're having it, do they relax? Do they keep their foot on the gas? If they're not having it, can they snap back and regain it? And what's the leadership like on the sideline in the game? What's the leadership like in the huddles, in the locker room? The impact of the helmet, the impact of the tablets, all that. Like, we haven't been through a full game with all this stuff, and so there's going to be a lot of learning, some on the field, some off the field, I think, that comes out of game one. And obviously we've got a lot of big tests in front of us, so no matter who we play after the first week, we want to be better and better and better and better as this season goes on.
You talked about some guys having a chip on their shoulder on the defense that, because Peyton's not here, somehow the defense isn't going to be as good. Tony's had such a long, successful history of Peyton's one of one, but the linebackers have been exceptional for a long time under him. How have those guys sort of embraced this role of chip on their shoulder, Tony Gibson linebackers? Yeah,
and I think it goes back to Isaiah Moore and Drake Thomas and Levi. Obviously Peyton, there's been a lot of them that have played well. Jermaine Pratt, Arius Moore. There's guys that have played really good in our defenses here at that position, and you always want to leave things better than you found them, right? And I think that's it. These guys want to play as well as they can because the standard of that room and all of our rooms is you want that. You want to leave things better than you found them. And so I think as players and as coaches, the not on my watch type of thing, that something's going to drop off. There's some internal pride about that guys have, and when you hear that you can't do something, that's a good motivator. And so I think those guys are hearing it or reading it, and I'm excited to see what they can do, and it's their opportunity now. And the film is your resume, so when you go out there, it's what you get to do. It's what you get to show. It's really an indicative thing of what you talk about and all the things that the linebackers and coach are trying to represent. So I know they're excited to prove themselves and take the next step.
In college basketball, they talk about getting old and then staying old. You mentioned your offensive line, all those graduates dotted up and down the 2D. How important is getting old or staying old in college football now, especially given how long the season is and how much experience plays a factor?
Yeah, one thing you can't do as a coach is make a guy experienced. You just can't do that. You play a freshman, he's a freshman. No matter how good he is, that's what he is. And there's going to be some mistakes that come with that youth. And so that is an advantage of bringing in older players. To staying old, I think, there's two ways to do that. There's the developmental piece of bringing younger players up and growing them like we do. And that's why you see we still had 18 high school signees in that class. And you want to have a blend of guys that have come in that are in their last year or two and guys that you're going to get to that point as well because they understand. And I think the longevity of being in a program, when you look at some of these guys like the Davin Vans and Sean Browns, Anthony Belt and Tim McKay, guys that have been here a long time, like their blood's in the bricks here, man. They've been a part of building this thing, and there's a lot to that. Like, you do not want it to not go your way because of how much you've invested, And so I think you need a blend of that. And I do think it's okay, to have some young guys playing too. Like, there's some freshness, and obviously KC brought a lot of juice to our offense last year as a young guy. So I think you can have that. You just don't want to be a bunch of that. We had that one year when I had a lot of injuries, and that was tough. There just wasn't enough experience out there to guide them.
How much has all that experience and all those guys with the blood and the bricks helped you incorporate these new guys and make that transition a little bit easier?
It helps a ton, because ultimately it's their team. I get the opportunity and the blessing of leading the team, but when they hit that grass, there's nothing I can do for them between the whistles. It's their team between the whistles, and when they get in that locker room, it's their team. And there's things that they got to be able to manage, and they want this program not just to have standards; they want standards to get elevated. And so they've got to be the caretakers of that. And the guys that have been here the longest, it's their responsibility. It's part of their legacy, to give back to the youth of the football team, or the newness that comes in through the portal.
With so many new faces this year, and obviously you guys using the portal as much as you did you sit down with the coaching staff at the beginning of the year and say, like, we do have a chemistry experiment here, how do we want to do this? And in particular, I'd be interested in hearing more about your camping trip, the camping trip you did.
I knew, just because of how recruiting was going for us in December with the guys that were calling us as soon as the portal started, that we were going to have something new on our hands. And so it just kind of marinated with me for a while. And when the season ended, I got away a few days and just really put some thought into what I need to do differently coming back, because it was going to be a different type of team, having that many older players come in. And I told the staff, like, hey, our calendar because I have a 12-month calendar, like, this calendar is going to look different. And here's why. And we've got to get these guys closer quick. And we can't just say it. Like, we have to create space for that on the calendar, not just when we're having meetings where we do Real World Wednesday and guys will get up and talk about their lives, but getting them out of their comfort zone, getting them out of the building. And so I had some good help, Jamie Slife, he's a good friend that works with the program, Special Forces, former Special Forces. And I talked a lot about, like, what have you done with other teams? Like, is there a place I can go with these guys? These guys have no idea what it's like to be in the woods at night. How can I get them somewhere and do something really cool with them? And it was his idea. He had been to the Camp Rockfish, which is down near Fayetteville, and it's a huge family camp. They do all kinds of different things down there. But they've got 20-plus outdoor leadership courses, and from climbing walls to flipping tires to whatever, they come up with it. And Jamie had done that, and not with a football team. He'd done it with smaller teams, baseball, softball, things like that. And he thought it would be really cool if we could do that. And so we were able to get Jamie and his team and then our team, and then go down there for a night and teach them all kinds of stuff away from football, and get them out of their comfort zone, and let them sleep in bunkhouses with their coaches, by the way. So it wasn't just players out of their comfort zone. I mean, you got, Coach and I sleeping in a bunkhouse with a bunch of players and all this stuff going on, and, the coaches are looking at me like I'm crazy. But I felt like it was something we needed to do, is to give them a unique life experience, and it was phenomenal. We came out of there really as one, did some interesting things wellness-wise. We've got a really good wellness coach that we've been working with as well that, taught the guys breath work and got them in the cold water. We're all on a lake together, a 55-degree lake, and there's guys that were freaking out, You're in a lake in Fayetteville, who knows what's in that water with you. And, yeah, muddy, smelly, cold, but just everybody doing the same thing together. And so it was really good. We did it right towards the end of spring ball. It's just a good way to kind of bring them together before spring ball ended, and then we, get ready for the summer program. But, coming out of December, I just felt like nothing was off limits when it came to how we need to get these guys closer. And that's one of the things I like to do. I like to do things differently. I don't, just because it worked doesn't mean it's best. Your ingredients on a football team are completely different every year.
Year 12 for you, Coach. What are you most proud of that you've, as a coach, have accomplished from the time you got here to where we are now?
I think just the consistency, the environment that we have for these guys. It's what I hoped it would be. Obviously, we want to have a championship trophy in that house with us too. But it's a place where guys can be themselves. It's a place where you teach respect, and it's a family environment. And I don't just say that because coaches say it. It is. I mean, people genuinely love each other in that building. We have incredible people working in there. Like, I mean, you go from one department to the next department. I don't care if you're talking about nutrition or talking about mental health, you're talking about the training staff, you're talking about the strength coaches, whoever it is, our operations department, our recruiting department, our graphics department, you name it. We have incredibly talented, good people around, and I'm proud of that, because those are all the people that I've been able to hire and retain, and thankful that I've had the ability to do that with whose help, because it hasn't always been that way. Sometimes you're in there like, man, I wish we could do better than this, but we got some great people, and so I get to come to work today and be surrounded, by guys I look forward to being around, and not just guys. I mean, it's a team of everybody's in there, and so, yeah, I'm very blessed to have the staff that I do.
Coach, a bit digging back off this question more on a technical level. Obviously, you mentioned all the new transfers you have, a majority of the offense actually being brand new people. What's it been like for you, Coach, and I, and the offensive staff in terms of making a new offense that incorporates all these new transfers, not only just the players themselves, but kind of their play style compared to last year?
It's been a process. I think every time you go to practice, sometimes things get uncovered about what a guy can do, because sometimes it takes a player a while to show you what he's really good at. He might just be thinking too much, or they're not in good enough shape yet to really expose what they can and can't do. But it's a process, and that's one of the strengths that Coach and I has. He's very, very pliable when it comes to moving things around and adjusting, from routes to blocking schemes to formations to motions. He's done a lot in his career, and so he can adjust pretty quickly. But it's been a fun process too, because obviously the offense ran through our slot last year for obvious reason why. He was really, really talented, and he could do things with the football. And now it's keeping that in the offense, and what else is going to happen with Jordan Waters, with Noah, with Takari, and all these things, Justin Jolie. So yeah, it's been fun to watch, and it's going to continue to evolve. Like game one, we're going to come out of that game with some insight, and then we got to tweak and change things a little bit for the next one, and then continue and continue. And I think you saw a really good visual of that last season. We were completely different in the first half than we were in the second half offensively, not just production, but systematically.
What's it been like for you to watch the development of Matt McCabe, the last 3 or 4 years?
Yeah, proud of Matt. He's put on probably 70 pounds of really good weight. Works really hard, earned a scholarship, and now he's starting, for us at tight end, and he's also, one of the primary backups inside. If something would happen, he could go play guard. And so really proud of him. It's a great story. And I think a year from now, if we don't have walk-ons, if that ends up being real, like that'll be a story you point to as what we're losing in college football, or those kind of stories. But yeah, couldn't say enough good things about him. I'm really excited for him. Told him that yesterday. I'm like, you worked really hard, and I can't wait to see what you do. And he's really excited.
With your
how important is that kind of position, like him or Isaiah Shirley or Shakir speak? I think a little bit last year being able to play tight end, but also be able to do something else if you need.
Well, it gives somebody a role that's kind of a sixth man for you on the O-line sometimes. It also opens up some run game. I think when you have a blocking tight end like that can also run, like Isaiah was a tight end in high school. He can catch the football. Like, he's not just a guy that can block, and so it opens up run game, play actions, gives you a really physical 3 or 4-man surface. Sometimes it can get softer, and that's the opposite of what we want it to be. We want to be able to be really physical at the point of attack when we have those guys in the game, and they can play on the ball, they can play off the ball. So it just adds things in the run game, which are really important, when it comes to sustaining drives and short yardage or 4-minute situations. And so yeah, I'm excited that we have the ability to expand and contract. You know what I mean? Like, we can get 5 really fast dudes out there in a heartbeat, and we can get really physical and big in a heartbeat. And so I like that.
With your 3 freshman receivers on the depth chart, you got to see what they did in high school. What's the process been like? And
For
how
who?
was the 3 freshman receivers, Terrell, Kareem,
Oh.
Jonathan? Obviously, Jonathan came in a little later than the other 2, but what's it been like to see like their process during fall camp and the ups and downs and exciting things that they can do?
Yeah, you know, all of them are gifted. The thing I like is how coachable they are, how hard they work. You know, Keenan started fast in the spring and then was out for a while with the, you know, soft tissue deal. He probably, of the 3, was the best in fall camp. He was consistent all the way through. Really did a good job this summer getting himself healthy. Terrell had the best spring, I think, of the guys, and started camp a little dinged up, and then is coming on here the last week or so. And then Paylor wasn't here in the spring, so like his first week was like, oh my gosh, you know, like this is what college football is about. He was so out of shape football-wise, fast, but you know, the stamina that you need. So he's learning, but each day he's out there. He's a really coachable guy. He's a really hard worker. He's getting better, and all of them upside, really good.
Dave, Zeke Terrell's getting a captain. He's a guy who's a transfer and missed spring practice because of an injury.
Mhm.
And I think every single player I've talked to in the past few months has mentioned his name at some point. What has he done to sort of ingrain himself with the program to that level without actually being on the field for such a good part of it?
That's impressive, right? I think first thing he did in the spring was learn how to lead from the back. When you're not on the field, it's hard. And so he was an encourager. You know, he was a guy that was in the meeting room talking to guys. He's played a lot of football, and so he immediately gets, this guy has played in 30 games. He's going to have respect because of that. But the way he went about trying to help people and then encourage people, and then when he was able to go, how hard he goes, how consistent he is, the type of person he is, how he carries himself. But he's earned it all, you know. I mean, it wasn't like we brought him in and said, here's your center, vote for him, you know. I mean, he's earned it all. And, yeah, same thing. I don't know that I've ever seen a transfer miss a portion of the year, especially right when they get there, and get that kind of recognition. It's pretty cool.
You said Anthony Belton has had the best fall camp of his career.
Yeah.
What have you seen out of him that separates that?
You know, he's in really good shape. His practice habits have become escalated as far as the urgency and the focus. Anthony likes to have fun. He's got a great personality, and sometimes that gets too close to the game for him. I think, you know, being able to compartmentalize those things, and this is work, this is fun, and knowing when it's time to do both. He's really grown up. He's had a really good fall camp, and I'm excited for him, really excited. Like, he's playing good football right now.
The
You
last
mentioned-
5 years or so, you've had anywhere between 68, 75 in-state players, and you've been able to retain a lot of them year over year. Why is that such a big deal to have those guys in this program?
You know, when I came up in the sport at other schools I've worked at and won championships at some of them and helped them build programs, when I looked at those programs, they were all heavily tilted to in-state. And so I don't know exactly why, but I think, in my opinion, it's because they live where they work, and they have to go home to their hometowns, and they have to talk about their school, you know. And there's a lot more people in those towns that want to follow them. And so when they get back, it's, hey man, you guys beat every team in your state, or hey, you guys had a great season. I'm not saying it's pressure, it's just reality. You know, when you're from here and you play here, it's different than when you go away. They don't forget who you are as a person, but they may not follow you, and it's probably not near and dear to them how your team's doing. They just wish you well, you know. You're playing for a lot of people when you played NC State. It's the largest alumni base in the state. It's a lot of people, and they care. And so there's that factor. It was that way, you know, at Montana, it was that way at Kansas, it was that way at Wisconsin. I mean, those people and the communities cared. And I think when you get players from there, and to why they don't transfer as much, because their families are closer, you know. There's a value to that quality of life you get when you can see whoever that is in your family, that's your person. You can see them more often, you know, and that helps you in this challenging window of time as a student athlete, because it is, and it is challenging. It's a huge, huge window of pressure, and having those people that love them the most close by, and then they got to move away. I think it's probably why you saw so many kids come back home that left our state and transferred here, because they missed that connection at home when they weren't playing in their own state.
Couple more questions.
Dave, for those first 11 years, if not all of them, there's been a monster in the ACC, whether it's Florida State or Clemson. When you look out of the landscape of the expanded league now, do you see a monster in your way?
I don't even think about it like that, you know. I think the thing that we've done over time here is be able to beat everyone we've played on the schedule at some point in time. There used to be a time where you look up and they hadn't beaten this team in 10 years, they hadn't beaten it, and that doesn't happen here anymore. We can beat anybody on our schedule, and our kids believe that. And so there's a belief. I don't know, because I really don't study everybody that we don't play. And there's some good teams we're not playing too this year. But I don't look at it that way as much as I look at what are we going to be, you know? And I hope that we're a monster for people. I really do. Time will tell. And hope we're a good monster that way. We're not, you know, hurting ourselves along the way. But that's why we play the games.
You mentioned the teams that you're not playing this year. Do you feel like that makes the opportunity this year that much greater?
It could. Again, these are preseason rankings, you know, and this is when everybody's teams are pretty much healthy. And so, as you know, who's good today may not be who's good later in the year. And so we're basing that on what people think of us, not what really is going to be on the field against us. So, yeah, and you guys know me well enough to know that I'm not going to base the strength of our schedule on where we're ranked in the preseason or where they're ranked. We'll see, you know, when we get to these teams at the end of the year, and when we get to the end of the year, you know, that's where you're going to find out how good they are. I wish they'd get rid of preseason rankings, personally, and, you know, start ranking teams midway through the year when they've earned who they are. I know that wouldn't be good for you guys because you'd have nothing to talk about probably, but, I mean, it's a lot of, you know, false stuff.
How does having the 2-minute warning this year change the way you manage a game at the end of the game?
You got an extra timeout, you know, and plays that could happen going into the 2 minutes could be different because there's going to be a stoppage there. Like you might have a team that just throws the ball and passed, and now they're going to run the football because there's 2:10 on the clock, and it's going to stop. You don't have to get a play that goes out of bounds. You're going to see things like that. You might use a timeout earlier in the half that maybe you wouldn't have because you wanted it later, knowing that you're getting an extra stoppage towards the end, you know. And it's going to be interesting because I mean I did a lot with that from February until the end of this training camp. We did a lot of what ifs around the 2 minutes and how that impacts the team trying to get the ball back. It's down and you're trying to get the ball back for your offense, and how much time there would be. It used to be if there was 2:40 on the clock with no timeouts, you could kneel it out, game over. Now it's you got to have a first down with 2 minutes on the clock, right? And so your game-ending play calling is now different for both sides, understanding that. So there's going to be some really good management of that, and there's going to be some mismanagement of that based on, you know, the work people have put in.
How have the players responded to that 2-minute warning? Because the end of the game can be, regardless if you're up or you're down, the end of the game can be very anxiety-inducing, full adrenaline when you have that 2-minute warning.
We've practiced it a lot. And so what I told them is I'm going to get you in these clutch situations a lot and unusual situations a lot. So when we end up in them, it's not unusual, and so that you're comfortable. And so we've done a lot. I mean, we started practicing 2-minute on the second day of training camp with the offense and defense. And so we've had, you know, 3 weeks of work, putting them in all kinds of what we call situation of the day work, where they can get out there at the end of a half or end of a game and go through a scenario and be ready for it in real time.
I don't know if it's off limits topic, but it's something I always just thought of, and I wanted to ask you to be fit for the last question. Obviously, last year you had the amazing viral clapback that I thought was super sick after one of the games at some media members. So I just wanted to ask, funny enough, obviously basketball ended up having some of their best seasons ever, so I just didn't know if it came across your mind, and I wanted to know, how excited are you to get this season started and really show how this football program has been built with you being here for so long, and obviously with you guys having such an underdog mindset for so long, being able to really go out there with this brand new team and show, like, hey, this is what we're about and this is what we're ready to do with the new era of college football playoffs as well.
Yeah, I'm excited for the college football playoffs. When I was coach at Montana, we played in the FCS playoffs 2 years in a row, and it's fun. It's really cool being in a bigger playoff like that. So I'm really excited just for sports in general to have a college football playoff, and excited to get on the field with our team. You know, last year has nothing to do with this year. Every year you got to go out there and prove who you are. And last year I had some opportunities to stand up for our team, and I did, and I'll continue to do that. I mean, that's my job. That's what I feel like my job is to stand up for our football team. And I have no problem doing that. And maybe those comments were good, maybe they weren't, but they were comments that I felt were the right things to do at the time. It's funny, I think I get more popularity out of the stupid stuff I say more than some of the good things that I do, but it's all good. I love this football team, just like I love the last one. Each kid on that team is important to me, and they work hard for our staff, for our school. And we're going to get on that grass together and go do the best we can. And whatever that looks like, it looks like. But it's going to be a fun season. These kids are into it, man. It's a good vibe in that locker room right now.